Good afternoon. The program will start in 5 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy International Museum Day and National Heritage Month. I am Camille of the Ethnology Division of the National Museum of the Philippines, and I will be your host and moderator for the photographer's talk by Mr. Paul Quiambao in relation to his photo exhibition entitled Tabawan, the Island of Pre-Islamic Rituals and Traditional Practices in Tawi-Tawi, which was launched last Saturday, May 15. The exhibition will run from May 16, 2021 to January 2, 2022 at the reception room of the National Museum of Anthropology. On behalf of the National Museum of the Philippines, we would like to extend again our gratitude to our partners, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the Bangsamoro Commission for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage, the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, the local government of South Ubian Municipality, and the Samatabawan community. Mr. Paul Quiambao would also like to acknowledge the genuine kindness of Alan Mar and the generosity of the entire Freyna and Lim family of Tabawan Island, who invited him to their homes and became his foster family during his documentation in Tawi-Tawi. This event is also live in the National Museum of the Philippines official YouTube channel. We would like to acknowledge the viewers here in Zoom and in YouTube. We have different viewers from all over the Philippines, and it is nice to see that there are a lot of students and teachers who are here. Before we start the program, I would like to remind you of some of the house rules during the talk. Kindly turn off your audio during the talk of Mr. Quiambao. You may turn on your video, but to save bandwidth, especially to those with limited connectivity, you may also turn it off. Towards the end of the webinar, an open forum will be facilitated. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, kindly type them in the Zoom chat box or in the comment sections of the live streams in Facebook and YouTube, along with your name, designation, and affiliation. You may type your questions even during the lecture proper. We will read your questions later in the open forum. To formally open the event, let us hear from our Deputy Director General for Museums of the National Museum of the Philippines, Dr. Ana Maria Teresa Labrador.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Happy International Museums Day and also, of course, National Heritage Month. So I actually decided to capture the interior of the exhibition Tabawan, no, by Paul Quiambao. We had a successful virtual launch last Saturday, May 15. And it was nice to see all his photographer friends and of course his friends from Tawi-Tawi and other parts of the Philippines. So, and it was actually quite nice to finally see Paul Quiambao even virtually. So, normally we would be able to meet people come and exhibit with us and have a nice talk with them. But because of the pandemic, we are restricted to do that. And so we limit our access to each other in that sense. So we're very happy that launch took place. And of course, we want to show that the museum is really at the forefront of heritage preservation, but also because, since we are suffering from this pandemic, we want some sort of relief from it. And having such wonderful projects like this one is so very much welcome, not only for, I think, for our audiences, but also for us. This is a worthwhile project to do. And I have been quite stunned by the images, no? And one of the things that really kept coming up in my mind, especially I think among the anthropologists, no, is how was he able to capture these images, and what kinds of sensitivities that entailed. We'll find out with this webinar from Paul. So we would like to welcome you all to your National Museum, even if it's still virtual, but hopefully you can also access the virtual tour of this exhibition on our social media platforms. No? And soon, hopefully, we could all come together and see this exhibition, of course, with certain health protocols. But welcome, and make sure that you listen intently to what Mr. Quiambao has to say in terms of, taking photographs and being able to gain the confidence of the Samatabawan who normally probably don't really care too much about being on social media. So, with their permission, I'm happy that they have allowed Paul also to display the photographs to a larger audience at the National Museum. So, thank you so much, and please enjoy this afternoon's program.
Thank you, Dr. Labrador, for that message. So before we proceed to the talk of Mr. Quiambao, we would like to share the virtual tour to the photo exhibition, Tabawan, the Island of Pre-Islamic Rituals and Traditional Practices in Tawi-Tawi by Mr. Paul Quiambao. The rituals featured in this photo exhibition and the fieldwork of Mr. Quiambao in Tabawan Island will serve as the anchor for the topics in today's lecture.
Tabawan, an island located in the northeasternmost part of Tawi-Tawi, is a bastion of pre-Islamic rituals, making it the last frontier of the Sama heritage. In the 2020 census, the island has a population of more than 33,000 residents. Their rituals across centuries were a mixture of shamanic rites and Islamic beliefs. Dependent on the phases of the lunar cycle, their rituals are interconnected from cradle to the grave, enriching their distinct cultural identity as Muslim Filipinos. Despite the inevitable transformation of its archaecultural milieu, the ancestral landscape of the island remains untouched as the people themselves initiate the preservation of their culture for the next generation. The community is proud of it and they highly value these indigenous practices that have been deeply ingrained into their consciousness as a people. Their practices vary from simple to elaborate, yet their purpose has always been for the general well-being of the society, as marked by Thanksgiving prayer at the end of their rituals. The exhibition has 7 sections, and the first section is the Pagunting. Pagunting is the hair-cutting ritual undergone by Sama infants to cleanse their birth impurities. Through this rite of passage, the child becomes a bona fide member of the community, as it marks the start of the child's new life in the presence of Allah. This customary rite usually takes place in the parent's house during the first week of the newborn child. It is also the time when the parents name their baby. Pagtubas is the second ritual featured in the exhibition. The Samatabawans believe that malevolent spirits are most prevalent and tend to linger within the living world to inflict illnesses or misfortune during the sapal. To avert the vagaries of nature, the young and old folks who participate in the pagtubas gather on the shallow waters of Laitan Island and take a ceremonial bath facing the direction of Kaba in the west. The religious elders will walk around the participants 7 times and splash seawater onto them to cleanse them of impending misfortunes. The third ritual is pagkawin. In Tawi-Tawi, pagkawin, or traditional wedding ceremony, is a social religious community affair marked by the colorful costumes and dances of the Samatabawan. They perform igal, their traditional dance, at the pantan or porch, attended by several well-wishers. While pagkawin is a universal occasion common to Islamized ethno-linguistic groups, it has been a way of forging an alliance between families that are relatives by affinity. Pai Baha'u, the fourth section of the exhibition, is the symbolic offering of yellow turmeric rice to the ancestors as thanksgiving for blessings, sharing of abundance, and supplication for daily sustenance. The occasion is observed annually during the season of the new harvest, usually between the first month, Muharram, or the second month, Sapal, of the Islamic calendar. Pagduwata is a 3-day dance and healing ritual that usually occurs after the Pai Baha'u to continue honoring the ancestors. The Duwata, or spirit medium, invokes the spirit of the Papagan during her eagle performance and enters into a trance to achieve the deep spiritual conscious state of patakkahan. Through frenetic dancing, they connect, commune, and communicate with the spirits. Pagjamu Bohe Dia is a 3-day Thanksgiving ritual for the abundance of water, celebrated through traditional dance and music. This occasion is also a fulfillment of the promise made between the Iraan, the first inhabitants in Tabawan, and the Sama ancestors to observe a celebration in the water well to commemorate their brief yet peaceful coexistence when they migrated and settled in the island sometime during the 11th century. Pagkamboan, the last section, is the annual homecoming tradition of the Samatabawan to honor and remember their dead ancestors. This ritual is observed 5 days before the start of the holy month of Ramadan. It is the only day in Tabawan in which thousands of families and relatives working overseas would come home to reunite and pay homage to their ancestors. Unique on its own, the people of Tabawan hold this occasion for one day to visit, clean, and pray on the graveyards of their loved ones. Subsequently, religious leaders pour ceremonial water on the grave markers and offer supplications to awaken the soul of their dead ancestors. They invite them back into the community to partake in the bounty of food prepared for them by their loved ones. Through these deep-rooted manifestations of their culture, the Samatabawan resonate the respect and harmonious coexistence among and between communities in the physical and spiritual realms of their society. The Tabawan, the island of pre-Islamic rituals and traditional practices in Tawi-Tawi, a photo exhibition by Paul Quiambao at the National Museum of Anthropology, will run from May 16, 2021 to January 2, 2022. Through this exhibition, we honor and celebrate our culture bearers for continuously defining the Filipino identity and inspiring others to take pride of the enduring traditions despite the challenging times. A blessed Eid to our Muslim brothers and sisters commemorating the Eid al-Fitr. We hope you have enjoyed the tour at your National Museum, PH.
Let me now introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Paul Alison R. Quiambao is a freelance photographer with more than a decade of experience in documenting landscapes, cultures, and remote islands of the Philippines. He has won grand prize in many photography competitions such as Digital Photographer Philippines Magazine and KLM Royal Dutch Airlines on assignment shoot in Amsterdam in 2014. His works were featured in solo and group exhibits like Inner Landscape in 2017, featuring iconic mountain peaks. Kaplag, Santo Niño Hope of the People in 2015, in celebration of the 450th anniversary of Santo Niño de Cebu, and Dear Yolanda in 2013. In 2020, he became an individual grant awardee of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Without further ado, here's Mr. Quiambao.
Hapon sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat sa pagdalo dito sa Photographer's Talk ng Tabawan Photo Exhibition. Ngayong hapon, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat sa pagdalo dito sa Photographer's Talk ng Tabawan Photo Exhibition. Ngayong hapon, ikikwento ko sa inyo yung mga naging experiences ko nung nag-immerse ako for 3 months sa Tawi-Tawi at sa Tabawan Island at pati na rin yung mga documentation ethics at cultural sensitivity issues na kailangan kong i-observe yung ginagawa ko yung fieldwork ko. Okay, so simulan natin yung kwento. Hindi lang iisa ang araw. Isa ito sa mga tumatak sa akin na quote nung ginagawa ko yung documentation ko dito sa Tawi-Tawi. So di ba usually sabi nila, seize the day or make the most out of it. Pero kapag nag-i-immerse, that's not usually the case. Kasi I did not jump right into the picture. So kumbaga hindi ko yung purpose ko or yung presence ko sa Tawi-Tawi, hindi lang ako basta photographer, but I enjoyed the little moments or the things that makes the big picture, which is the everyday process of um, storytelling with the people, um, sharing a cup of coffee with them. Yeah. Yun yung kumbaga bumuo ng exhibition na ito. So hindi lang pagpunta ko doon documentation agad, photography agad. Hindi ganoon. Kailangan dahan-dahan mong tahiin at mabuo yung kwento. Okay, so on the ground communication, before going to the community, you need an FPIC permit or free prior informed consent from the National Commission of Indigenous Peoples or NCIP. Pero kapag naman you're doing a project under BARM or sa lugar na sakop ng BARM or Bangsamoro region, yung opisina kung saan ka kukuha ng FPIC permit ay sa Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs. And once you're already in the community, you need to make courtesy visit to the LGU and state your purpose clearly. So if you're a traveler and if you want to get to know their culture, yan, kailangan may heads up yung local government para alam nila na meron silang bisita at para hindi rin magtanong-tanong yung ibang locals kasi ang mangyayari dyan kapag dumating ka sa community, hindi ka dumaan sa nasa itaas or sa government nila, hindi ka nag-prior visit, maki-question yung intent mo or yung presence mo sa community dahil kapag uusapan ka kung anong ginagawa mo, sino ka, para saan yan. So, kapag meron ka ng bas-bas, kumbaga, sa itaas, mas madali at mas magiging socially accepted ka sa komunidad. Yan. And then you get to know the Council of Elders. Sa mga community, merong mga set of Council of Elders and kailangan makilala natin sila dahil baka hindi pala natin alam, nakasalubong na natin sila or katabi na natin silang kumakain. So, it also shows sign of respect na makilala sila at ma-address sila sa kung anong tawag sa kanila ng mga tao. For example, Babu or Bapa, Bapa Billy, for example, or Bapa Tahamid, ganyan. Magandang practice yon to show your respect sa mga matatanda. And sila rin kasi yung magbibigay sa iyo rin ng permission. So after you make a courtesy visit to the LGU, ang next is the Council of Elders dahil kailangan mong paalam sa kanila na gumagawa ka ng documentation or ng research. And then you engage and seek the help of ITMR or Indigenous Peoples Mandatory Representative and the help of local scholars kasi mas alam nila yung kultura nila at mas kumbaga sila yung on the grounds, so alam nila yung for example description ng isang ritual or ano yung proper terminology or proper spelling ng isang object, ganyan. So kumbaga you do not just go and bypass go to the community and bypass the people who are doing research or documentation. Kailangan you engage with them and you kumbaga, work side by side with them. Kasi sila yung magiging partners mo to publish your work properly and kumbaga, this will also avoid cultural distortion or misrepresentation of culture. And for example, meron ka lang isang maling description na account kasi gusto mo yun. Yun yung pagkakaintindi mo. Pero hindi ka kasi taga doon eh. Mas alam nila yung kultura nila. So, sila yung kailangan na mag-provide ng information. Kumbaga. Yeah. And sincerity of Thanksgiving. Nung experience ko sa Pagunting ritual or Pagunting rite of passage, after the event, we had this salo-salo dun sa loob ng mosque sa Langgal. Yun yung center, yun yung sacred structure right at the center of the village. And at that time, when we were having meals, I really felt overwhelmed kasi that was the first time I was given permission to document a socio-religious event. And first time ko rin na pumasok sa Langgal. Usually daw kasi hindi ka pwedeng pumasok basta-basta kapag walang permission na binigay yung mga elders. So, nung nandun ako, kasama ko yung mga Council of Elders, tinitingnan ko sila isa-isa, and nakita ko meron silang nagkakantuhan sila, ganyan, and karamihan nagsisigarilyo. So, sabi ko sa sarili ko, after the ritual, I want to reciprocate their gesture sa binigay nila sa akin permission na mag-document at dito sa pag-welcome nila sa akin at pag-share nila ng food. So, as a sign of Thanksgiving, pupunta ako after the event, lumabas ako ng mosque at pumunta sa pinakamalapit na sari-sari store para bumili ng sigarilyo. At bumalik ako doon sa loob ng mosque at binigyan ko sila isa-isa ng sigarilyo dahil gusto ko magpasalamat. Gusto kong maiparamdam sa kanila na I am really grateful that they allowed me to document this event. And yun fact rin na pinapasok nila ako sa mosque. Kasi yun nga, hindi basta-basta pwedeng pumasok, lalo na outsider ako. And apparently, nung lumabas ako at pumunta sa tindahan at bumalik ulit, may mga nakakita pala sa aking mga elders sa labas across the mosque. And one of them was Bapa Castillo. Nung una daw, first few days ko sa Tabawan, nung nakikita niya ako, nagkakasalubong kami, medyo, kumbaga, kini-question niya yung yung purpose ko or yung intent ko sa community kasi syempre outsider ako and bigla akong nandun sa Tabawan. So nung nakita daw niya na lumabas ako at bumalik, may dala-dalang sigarilyo para magpasalamat sa mga elders, doon niya raw naramdaman yung sincerity ko sa purpose ko sa Tabawan. And hindi pa kasi kami magkakilala noon ni Bapa Billy. Nakilala ko siya sa ilan ba? Siguro on my second or third visit, doon ko nakilala si Bapa Billy. And yun, kinuwento niya sa akin noon na nung una, medyo doubtful siya sa presence ko. But nung nakita daw niya, nung bumalik ako sa mosque na may dala-dalang pasasalamat, sabi niya, sincere ako sa purpose ko sa Tawi-Tawi or sa Tabawan. And then, before immersing to the community, you make prior research about the do's and don'ts. So, for example, when you're entering a sacred structure or you're entering a mosque, you need to dress properly. And ako noon, since may tattoo ako sa forearm ko, and tattoos are prohibited in among Muslims, ang ginagawa ko noon, naka long sleeve ako kapag papasok ako sa mosque. So out of respect to their religion, and inisip ko kasi noon baka the imams or the religious leaders would kumbaga hindi lang ako papayagan pumasok kasi meron akong tattoo. So out of respect, tinatakpan ko yung mga tattoo ko para ano na rin, para kumbaga ano ko sa kanila yan, sa kultura nila, pagbibigay respeto. Yan. So, gestures to be one with the community. Ito sa Sheikh Makdoum Mosque, Simunul. So, whenever there's a Thanksgiving prayer in Tabawan, kapag kukuha ko ng litrato, pagkatapos ko kumuha ng litrato, like for example, I take 1 to 5 pictures, and then after that, I would bring down my camera and also follow their gestures or to show respect doon sa moment or doon sa prayer. So, they're dito sa litrato na to, they're giving thanks for the blessings that they've received for their everyday life. And pag nakikita nila akong nakaganon, mas nagiging comfortable sila sa akin kasi nararamdaman nila na I respect their culture, I respect their religion, and kumbaga hindi ako naiiba, parang ganon. Hindi ako visitor na photographer lang. So, yeah, I follow their gestures. And then local translators. So your friends are your local translators. And kailangan na kapag mag-establish ka ng communication among the elders, sila rin, yung mga translators or yung mga kaibigan mo, sila rin yung tutulong sa'yo to communicate with them. Kasi dito sa Tabawan, yung ibang matatanda, hindi nakakaintindi ng Tagalog. And kailangan kong maghanap ng tutulong sa akin noon na mag-translate ng gusto kong itanong or gusto kong sabihin sa mga matatanda. So, and you also, it's nice to get to know some simple phrases kapag nandun ka sa community, kapag gumagawa ka ng research. So, for example, tatanong mo yung pangalan or tatanong mo yung edad, ganyan. Tatanong mo taga saan siya or yung simple phrase of pasasalamat, ganyan. Para maramdaman nilang mga tao na gusto mo talagang matutunan yung kultura nila. You speak their language, kumbaga. So, yeah. Your friends are your translators. Yeah. And then prior communication and consent. So, in the Pagjamu Buhiliya ritual, the ritual that happens once in 5 to 10 years, I sent a prior communication letter to the ritual leader asking for permission kung pwede ako mag-document ng event nila for this NCCA grant. And pinadala ko yung sulat from Manila to Tabawan through LBC. And so malayo yung pinanggalingan ng sulat, pero pagdating ko naman doon, nung nakarating yung sulat sa Tabawan, pinabasa agad sa ritual leader, and he gladly gave me the permission to document their event. So, nung nakarating na ako sa Tabawan, I made courtesy visit to the ritual leader, and I ask for the documentation guidelines that I need to observe when taking pictures, ganyan. Apparently, sabi niya sa akin, pwede akong kumuha ng litrato, pero bawal na bawal mag-video. And yun yung only, kumbaga, only restriction niya sa kanilang event. So, which I gladly respected. And hindi ako kumuha nun ng video dahil ito yung kaisa-isang documentation guideline na hindi ko pwedeng gawin. And then when the ritual already commenced, one by one, nag-unfold rin yung ibang documentation guidelines na hindi na sabi sa akin nun. Hindi pala ako pwedeng lumapit sa ritual grounds. Hindi ako pwedeng pumasok sa ritual grounds, rather. Pwede ako lumapit pero nandun lang ako sa labas. Hindi ako pwedeng pumasok. And then, hindi ako pwedeng lumapit sa mga duwata or mga shamans kapag sumasayaw sila. And hindi rin pwedeng takpan yung point of view ng mga shaman. Hindi mo pwedeng ma-block yung point of view ng mga shamans, yung mga duwata, kasi ina-align nila yung sarili nila kapag sumasayaw sa buhidiya. So they invoke their ancestors by aligning themselves from the ritual grounds, from what they call the panggong, directly to the buhidiya, which is around 15 to 20 meters away. Yan, yung difference niya. And then you wait until the people are comfortable with you before you press the shutter. Kailangan yung presence mo dapat maging socially acceptable bago ko kumuha ng litrato, lalo na sa mga sacred rituals. Hindi ka naman pwedeng basta-basta pagdating sa isang event, dala-dala mo na agad yung camera mo, hindi naman ganun. Tapos kukuha ka agad. So it's very insensitive. You wait until they are comfortable before you take the picture. So how to do this? Kwento. So makipagkwentuhan sa mga locals or sa mga tao. So yun yung kumbaga ticket to their rites and rituals. Kasi mahilig sila makipagkwentuhan sa Tabawan. So, and also coffee. Yan, kape pala. Yung pakikipagkwentuhan kasama ng kape, magiging komportable sila sa iyo nun. And lalo-lalo na kapag kumbaga, you're sensitive about their culture, you highly respect their culture. Ayan. And also, kapag sinabi nilang hindi pwede. Yung isa yung sa mga natutunan ko sa immersion ko sa Tawi-Tawi. Hindi po pwedeng hindi ka pwedeng maging entitled na bisita ka tapos gusto mong punta dito, gusto mong kaanan to, hindi pwedeng ganun. Hindi basta-basta magagawa yung ganun. So, yeah. And then you bring all the necessary camera equipment. If you have a wide lens, prime lens, or zoom lens, you bring all those lenses para prepared ka whenever there's a moment na hindi mo ina-expect na mangyari. Like, for example, this alignment of the full moon and the crescent moon. I mean, the full moon is juxtaposed to the crescent and star spire of a mosque. Yeah. So I took this using a 400 millimeter lens. If ever I used a 24 to 105, hindi ko makukuhanan yung ganito ka lapit na larawan. So, yeah, importante na yung dinadala mong mga gamit ay tamang-tama para sa documentation mo. Kasi, for example, dun sa like pagjamu buhidiya ritual, hindi ka pwedeng lumapit sa mga sumasayaw. If, for example, naisip mo na gusto mo mas intimate yung shot or mas very close to the dancer, hindi pwede yun. Doon papasok yung proper equipment, na zoom lens. Yeah. So the Pagjamu Buhidiya ritual is a 3-day Thanksgiving ritual for the abundance of water dun sa Buhidiya. And 3 days, day and night, and celebration. So the ritual stops or takes a break kapag prayer, time for prayer. But from day until night, tuloy-tuloy yan. Sasayaw yung mga duwata and tutugtog ng tagungguan for their traditional musical ensemble. So in the Paibahao ritual, clear your mind from pre-visualized compositions. Kasi usually for photographers, merong mga nai-imagine na yan na imahe sa isipan. Pero hindi mo rin siya kadalasan may execute dahil ang daming restrictions na kailangan mong i-observe. For example, hindi ka pwedeng na-imagine mo, mas maganda to sa angle na to dahil kita doon yung buong celebration. Pero hindi mo rin pwedeng magawa yun dahil wala kang mapupuntahan na area para makuhanan yung litrato na yon. Or, for example, yun nga, as I've mentioned earlier, yung sa pagjamu, pag sumasayaw sila, yung mga duwata, kunwari, imagine mo, mas intimate yung shot, pero hindi mo rin siya magagawa dahil hindi ka pwedeng lumapit. So you clear your mind from pre-visualized compositions and you work what's in front of you, kumbaga. Usually, meron talagang mga set of realities and expectations. And in terms of reality, you never stage the moment. You make the moment authentic by kumbaga hindi mo sila papa-pose or hindi mo sila ipapa-drawing. Hindi ka magdo-drawing ng litrato, kumbaga. Yun yung term when it comes to photojournalism. And my approach in this documentation is ethno-photojournalistic reportage. So I incorporated my knowledge in photojournalism when I had this certificate course in the Photojournalist Center of the Philippines. So isa dun sa mga natutunan ko doon ay hindi ka pwedeng mag-stage ng moments or hindi ka pwedeng mag-drawing. Yun yung term nila. So mas authentic, mas natural, and mas better. So then you bring down your camera, you participate, and you be human. So nung nakita ko nagbabayo sila ng palay, after kong kumuha ng litrato, gusto ko ring makatulong sa kanila na magbayo ng palay kasi medyo marami silang kailangang trabahuhin. So I brought down my camera, I participated, so doon nila mas naramdaman na mas comfortable, mas naging comfortable sila sa akin kasi gusto ko ma-experience yung culture nila, yung everyday life nila. Yan. And in that moment, nandun pala yung isa sa mga nakuhanan ko ng Pagjamu Buhidiya, isa sa mga dancers, isa sa mga duwata. And hindi ko siya agad nakilala dahil meron siyang suot na dito scarf sa ulo niya. Siya pala yung nakuhanan ko noon ng litrato, si Babu Pularia. Yung litrato niya kasi isa sa mga pinakamagandang litrato na nakunan ko noon sa event na yon. So after the Pagjamu, I never had a chance to communicate with her or see her kasi time constraint, kailangan ko na umuwi nun sa Manila. And then, nung time na nagbabayo kami ng palay, yan, siya pala yun. Nakakatabi ko na pala siya. So, sabi ko sa kanya, Babu, pwede ko kayong puntahan sa bahay niyo kung gano'n. Gusto ko pong ipakita sa inyo yung litrato na nakunan ko nung ritual. So, she gladly accepted and yun, natuwa siya na pinuntahan ko siya at pinakita ko sa kanya yung litrato niya. And I also asked permission if pwedeng i-publish yung litrato na yun for the exhibition. And she gave me the permission. Yeah. So after you take the image or after you document an event, you communicate with the people that you've taken a picture of. Yeah. And then even if the elders granted permission before the day of the ritual, you ask again for permission before the start of the ritual. So dun sa paibahao, bago magkaroon ng ritual nun, nag-seek ako ng permission to document the event sa elders. And binayagan naman nila ako. So, but pagdating ko doon, I also seek another permission para lang for assurance na talagang papayagan nila ako mag-document ng sacred ritual na yun. And in the Pagdawata ritual, I build rapport among the people in the simplest moment. So kaya nakapag-document ako ng Pagdawata noon kasi naimbita ako sa picnic sa beach. Yeah. Inimbita ako ng pamilya sa beach para mag-picnic. And nung pag-imbita nila sa akin, ito pala yung naging daan para maging comfortable sila sa akin. And yeah, sila yung family of Pagdawata. Isa sa mga families na naggawa ng Pagdawata sa barangay Tinda-Tindahan. So, and then, yun nga, as I've mentioned earlier, nung time na nakisama ako sa kanila for a picnic sa beach, this was 2019, and pagbalik ko ng 2020 sa community, inimbita nila ako for a ritual. And hindi ko alam nun na Pagdawata pala yun kasi nangyari ang Pagdawata after the Paibahao. Sabi nung isa sa mga kaibigan ko dun sa Tabawan, magtatagungguan dito sa barangay namin 3 days after the Paibahao. And yun yung term na ginamit niya, magtatagungguan or yung traditional playing of musical ensemble. So after nun, sabi ko, ay ito pala yung yung Pagdawata kasi lagi ko lang siya naririnig sa mga elders noon. So just imagine from the simplest moments into the grand moments of the documentation. So, kung siguro hindi ako sumama dun sa picnic na yon or hindi ako naimbita, hindi din ako makakapag-document ng Pagdawata. Ito yung scenario sa Pagdawata. Ito yung mga players of Tagungguan. And dito sa right side of the image, hindi lang nakita sa litrato, dyan yung mga sumasayaw. And then jam-pack usually, maraming nanonood. So whenever there's a sacred ritual like the Pagdawata, I focus and stay in one location only. And gagalaw lang ako kapag tumigil yung tagungguan, yung sound of the musical instrument, and also kapag wala nang sumasayaw, out of respect doon sa sacredness of the event. So, yeah. Kadalasan, nandito lang ako sa corner and sa tabi ng mga tumutugtog. And hindi ka pwedeng basta-basta kasi maglakad or tumayo kasi syempre mabablock mo yung point of view ng mga tao. So, you need to be aware of that. You need to be really, really sensitive of your gestures or your position kung saan ka kukuha ng litrato. hindi ka pwede dito sa gilid dahil nandito yung mga duwata or yung mga sumasayaw. So, yeah, kailangan lang really observe strict cultural sensitivity. And then in the pagtimbang, 2 hours before my departure from Tabawan to Manila, pauwi na ako nun, I chanced upon this ritual connected with the Pagunting. So apparently, kapag pala pinanganak ka sa month of Safal or the second month of the Islamic Hijra calendar, for the elders believe na malas yun na pinanganak ka sa Safal. So to counter the possible misfortunes that could happen, the children or the kid would undergo this ritual that they call pagtimbang. So ito yung timbangan. It's a wooden pole. It's a wooden pole na merong hammock na nakakabit. So ang mangyayari dyan, sa both sides or both corner of the pole, merong dalawang hammock, and yung isang hammock, doon nakalagay yung bata, and the other one, doon nakalagay yung ritual goods such as water from the buhidia, panyam, firewood, buko, and kailangan timbangin. Kailangan maging balanse. So kapag kulang, kailangan dagdagan ng panyam, ganun, ang maging balanse. And doon sa taas dito sa beam, kung saan nakasabit yung timbangan, meron dalawang manok sa both ends of the beam, and it represents the balance of life. So nung nag-document ako ng pagtimbang, I secured permission first from the Council of Elders, which they gave me the permission to document. But when I was about to take pictures nung event, yung family na bata na titimbangin, sabi sa akin, hindi ka pwedeng kumuha ng litrato. They rejected my intent or my purpose of taking pictures. Kasi apparently, yung family na yon na bata na titimbangin, yung mag-undergo this ritual, family siya of the revered ancestor in Tabawan. So I respected their decision that they said no. Ang ginawa ko na lang, instead of taking pictures, I took pictures using my eyes. Tinandaan ko na lang kung ano yung nangyari dun sa event, and iniikot for 7 times yung pole, and habang iniikot yung bata, nandito yung bata, tapos on the other side may ritual goods. So habang iniikot ng mga imams, ng mga religious elders yung pole, nag-chant sila ng Arabic passages. And then after that, tatanggalin na yung bata, and yun na. Tapos na yung ritual. So mabilis lang yung pagtimbang, and yun ya, brief lang tong rite of passage na to. So in the paglugo chanting, always respect the food that they give. Kahit busog ka na, kailangan mo pa rin tanggapin yung binibigay nilang pagkain, kasi gusto talaga nilang i-share yung culture nila. For example, Babu Rabi, binigyan niya ako ng panyam. So kahit nabusog na ako, kinain ko pa din as respect to her. Siguro mga 15 minutes to 20 minutes ko kinain yung panyam or yung rice cake nila after nila mag-chant ng ritual. So sila yung mga naging kaibigan kong duwata sa Tabawan, and naging comfortable sila sa akin kasi nakikipagkwentuhan ako sa kanila under the moonlight. Yan. So pagka bulog ang buwan, kapag maliwanag ang buwan, yung mga matatanda, kadalasan nandun sila sa mga pantan nila or their open porch and makikipagkwentuhan sila sa isa't isa. So yun, always respect the food that they give kasi malaking bagay yun na hindi ka nagre-reject sa mga binibigay nila or sa mga gusto nilang i-share sa'yo. Yan. And in the pagkubol, that's one, you empathize and don't be an opportunist. So the pagkubol is a death ritual. So ito yung dadalhin na yung patay sa kanyang libingan. And I was able to document the pagkubol kasi may tumawag sa akin na elder to take pictures. So itong picture na to was taken using a cellphone camera. Nasa labas ako ng bahay. Yung bahay na tinutuluyan ko was located on the right side of the image. On the left side of the image. And yung namatay ay kapitbahay namin. So dito sa bahay na to, sa bahay niya. So sabi sa akin, tinawag ako ng isang elder and sabi niya, dali yung camera mo. So syempre ako naman being aware of the situation, ayoko namang kumuha lang basta-basta ng litrato. Tinanong ko kung pwede po bang kumuha ng litrato? Kasi syempre, out of respect, mayroong namatay, hindi ka naman pwedeng basta-basta kumuha ng litrato. Sabi niya, oo, pwede yan. Itanong natin kay Bapa Ebig, yung isa sa mga relatives nung namatay na elder. So, tanong natin kay Bapa Ebig, sabi niya gano'n. So, nung tinanong namin kay Bapa Ebig, ito, siya yung si Bapa Ebig. Pwede naman daw ako kumuha ng litrato as long as hindi ako kukuha ng litrato sa loob kapag hinuhugasan na yung katawan nung namatay. At bago siya balutin ng white cloth. So, yun, pinayagan nila ako sumama sa Bunbun Island. It's a separate island, siguro mga 10 to 15 minutes away from the mainland. Or sorry, mga 5 to 10 minutes lang pala. So doon nila dinadala yung mga patay and doon nila ililibing. So kaya naka-document ako ng pagkubol. Not because I intended to document that, but yung elder na yung nag-ask sa akin if I can take pictures. Yun. And then lastly, the promise of giving back the images. So whenever I state my purpose, sinasabi ko sa mga locals that this what I'm doing is this is my Thanksgiving to the community, kumbaga. Through photography, I want to give thanks and I want to highlight their culture in the Bangsamoro and in the Bangsamoro Museum and the National Museum. So kapag bumabalik ako doon sa kanila, sa community, lagi ako may dala-dalang mga printouts. Binabalik ko yung litrato kasi in the first place, kultura nila yun, moment nila yun, and nararapat lang na ibalik sa kanila yung mga litrato nila. Kasi kapag hindi mo ginawa yun, para kang nagnakaw ng ano sa kanila. Para kang nagnakaw sa kultura nila. And yeah, I always show what I have taken. I always show it to the people that I have captured. And I fulfilled my promise kasi yun nga, kapag tinatanong nila ano yung para saan to, sabi ko, para po sa NCCA grant, nakakuha po ako ng NCCA grant, and yung purpose po nito is to have an exhibition in the Bangsamoro Museum and the National Museum. So in December 2020, I fulfilled the promise to highlight their stories, their narratives in the Bangsamoro Museum. And last May 15, the National Museum exhibit, the Tabawan exhibition in the National Museum opened via Zoom. And so I have fulfilled my promise among the elders to highlight their stories in the museums of the Philippines. So yun. Maraming salamat. Sana meron kayong napulot na mga documentation ethics and cultural sensitivity kailangan nating i-observe kapag document tayo ng kultura. ng mga kapatid nating Muslims or kung hindi man Muslims, mga iba't ibang IT groups. So, yun lang. Kailangan lang maging sensitibo tayo sa kultura dahil ayaw nating makadisrespect ng mga tao. So, with that, magsukul and alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Quiambao, for that very informative and moving sharing of your experience in Tawi-Tawi and for somehow bringing us all in Tawi-Tawi. I particularly like the parts where you highlighted the importance of going through ethical procedures and asking consent and the fulfillment of the promise of giving back to the community through the printed photographs and exhibits. I'm sure that our viewers learned a lot from your presentation. So now, we will proceed with the open forum for your questions, comments, or concerns. Kindly kindly type them in the Zoom chat box or in the comment section of the live stream in YouTube, along with your name, designation, and affiliation, and I will read them for you. Or you may raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged before turning on your mic to directly ask Mr. Quiambao. Any questions po? Here we have the first question, Mr. Paul. This question is from the Ethnology Division of the National Museum. You document landscapes and people. Anong mas madaling i-document at important points kapag landscape at kapag tao ang i-document?
Kapag landscapes, usually ang din-document ko is like I document the landscapes from different angles, and when it comes to people, I document their traditions or their way of life. Kasi that, kumbaga hindi siya yung document. These are usually the everyday life of the people. Ito yung mga usually nasa sideline. And it's really important to immerse yourself and get to know their story para mabigyan ng importansya yung kanilang kultura. Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks for that. Hello. Next question po. Out of ilang photos ang pinagpilian mo sa 57 photos na naka-exhibit?
I took thousands of images. Sobrang dami ko nakuha na listato, but it was really hard to choose the images, but it all boils down to the narrative or to the story, kung ano yung importante para sa storya. Hindi lang siya kailangan basta maganda. Because before doing this story or this documentary, I asked help, or I asked comments from Sir Ricky Jose of the USC archive, and he said, and he in-advise niya ako na don't just take pretty images, or don't just take beautiful pictures. Make sure that it has depth and kumbaga may kwento. Bawat litrato may kwento. Hindi lang basta maganda dapat.
Next question is from our Deputy Director General for Museums, Dr. Anna Labrador. How did you develop that sensitivity in photographing members of the community? Do you have a background in anthropology?
Right now, well, I don't have any background in anthropology or cultural studies and Islamic studies. So everything that I wrote and everything that I made for this NCCA grant was from scratch. So I had to read books related to Muslim Filipinos and read every day about Tabawan or about anything that is related to dance or to shaman. And I was able to develop the sensitivity because I have been traveling around the Philippines for almost a decade. But during those times, kumbaga my subjects were landscapes. So, but through the process, yung dun sa immersion ko with community, um, nakita ko pala na marunong pala akong makisama nun sa mga tao. Hindi lang basta sa kumuha ng landscapes. And also, um, in addition to that, hindi ko sila consider as my subject. Kasi being a photographer, di ba, usually it's the subject, di ba? Kinukunan. But I consider them as my co-collaborators. Kasi it's a collaboration between you and them. And you need to really establish a good communication with them. Kailangan you spend time with them, invest your time with them. And dahil doon, nag-open up sila sa akin. Sila na mismo yung nag-open up ng culture nila sa akin. So, and also yung kanina dun sa first slide, yung hindi lang iisa ang araw, ay sa pinaka-importante tumatak sa akin na dala-dala ko araw-araw sa Tabawan. Kasi hindi lang ako pwedeng basta-basta lang kumuha ng litrato. Kailangan lagi may consent, lagi may permission. And pag sinabi nilang hindi pwede, hindi talaga pwede. Dahil meron ako mga images na ipinaalam sa mga shaman, pero hindi nila ako binigyan ng permission. Because apparently, yung nakuran ko daw na imahe ay hindi sila yon, kundi yung spiritual beings na nag-co-dwell or commune dun sa kanila nung time of the ritual.
Next question is from Marin Dasal. After taking the photos from the rituals, how and when do you gather the specific data to draft captions for the photos?
Sorry, alin ulit?
After taking the photos from the rituals, how and when do you gather the specific data to draft captions for the photos?
Yung captions, yung gathering of data happened right after the ritual. So, pagkatapos na maganap yung ritual, I will ask some questions. But through, informal lang siya, like casual storytelling lang with them. Tatanong lang ako, sino po yung pumasok sa inyo na ancestor nila, gano'n. Or ano yung tawag sa ganitong sayaw. And also, ano yung tawag sa ganitong like object inside their house na ginagamit for the ritual. And, after that, kapag meron pa akong mga na-develop na storyline, itatanong ko siya kapag balik ko na sa community. Hindi ako basta-basta nagtatanong lang through phone or through text message. So for me, that's very informal and insensitive. So, I do it when I'm already in the community. Ayun. And yung na-develop yung caption, yung na-develop yung storyline actually, mga one month after I finished the documentation.
Tagal din. Next question is from Hilda Labinet. What was your biggest motivation in becoming a photographer?
Dati kasi hindi ako marunong magkwento. Hindi ako, kumbaga, this story of Tabawan became my, parang blessing of fire, parang gano'n. Ito yung, first story na natapos at nabuo. And my motivation really is to share their story. I want to learn how to tell stories through my photographs. And yun, as I've mentioned earlier, yung thanksgiving ko sa kanila. Yun talaga yung nag-propel sa akin na gawin at tapusin itong storya na to amid the pandemic. That motivated me to be a photographer and also a storyteller.
Next question is from Nanette Matilak. Do you know why the elders prohibited you from taking videos? I think ito yung sa pagtimbang. Tama ba?
Pagjamo buhi
Yeah.
In the pagtimbang, I was prohibited not to take pictures and also videos. So actually, sa pagtimbang, as in no documentation talaga. And yung doon sa pagjamo buhidia, hindi na ako nagtanong kung bakit siya hindi pwede. Most likely dahil nga they are being communed by their ancestors. So pag kasi they're in trance, syempre hindi na nila alam kumbaga wala na sila sa full consciousness nila. They are half conscious na sumasayaw sila. So every time I ask the duwata kung ano yung nararamdaman nila or kung alam ba nila itsura nila during the time of the ritual, hindi daw nila alam. Kasi apparently yung mga ancestors, kapag nag-commune na sa katawan nila to be appeased through eagle dancing, yung mga ancestors na yung namimili ng anong isusuot, anong susuotin na damit, or ano yung hahawakan na ritual object para isayaw. So I guess it's because they're in trance, kaya prohibit yung videos. And, yeah.
For our viewers sa Zoom, maybe you want to directly ask Mr. Quiambao kung may questions po kayo. As for now, basahin ko lang po yung mga nag-comment na dito sa chat box. So next question po is from Pilarica Garcia. How did you find the experience when you stayed with them?
Sobrang overwhelming. Hindi sila madamot. Lagi silang nag-share ng kung ano mang meron sila at kung ano mang kaya nila. And ang mga parang kumbaga na-realize ko rin. Kasi ang 200 pesos malaking bagay yun sa Tabawan. Sa mga pamilya na, lalo na in time of the pandemic. 200 pesos, 100 pesos, malaki yun para makabili ng bigas o ng ulam para sa mga araw-araw. And kapag bumibisita ako sa mga bahay nila, laging meron pagkain silang ihahanda or biscuit or coke or papagastos sila. Parang ako nakakahiya na syempre malaking bagay yung pera, lalo na sa ngayong time of the pandemic. So it's really nakaka-touch dahil kung generally the Filipinos are hospitable, the Samatabawan have toppled it twice or thrice. They have toppled it twofold. Ganun sila ka-generous and ka-welcoming sa community nila. And lagi nilang sinasabi sa akin na among all the islands in Tawi-Tawi, sa kanila lang daw yung ganong kultura at yung ganon ka peaceful, peace-loving. So, kumbaga aware sila na doon lang sa kanila yung ganon. Kasi pag punta ka daw sa ibang isla, hindi ganon yung trato nila sa'yo.
Next question from Nanette Matilak. Did you consider the idea of getting permission from the spirits through the shamans to allow you to document the images that were sacred or spiritual?
Yes, actually, nung pagbalik ko last 2020, dahil nung nakabalik ako noong 2020, I asked permission from the spirit, like the final permission, the last permission that I need to secure from them. And I was able to do that by magpasuko, or you give contribution to the ancestral house kung saan nakatira yung mga spirit. So, yung magpasuko, magbibigay ka ng any contribution, food, or anything that comes from your heart sincerely. And yun, lahat ng na-document ko, nagpaalam ako sa mga ancestral spirits. And also dun sa isang revered ancestral house, I also seek permission and seek permission from the elders and also to the spirits. Kasi syempre hindi lang naman yung mga tao yung kailangan ko ipagpaalamanan, lalo na pag yung litrato ay communed by the spirit, yung taong kita dun sa laraw. So,
any more questions from our viewers dito sa Zoom at pati sa YouTube? Or may gusto pa po kayong idagdag, Mr. Quiambao, to share with us na hindi na isama doon sa talk? Wala na po. Ako po pwedeng magtanong. Kasi di ba sa title nakalagay na Pre-Islamic? Is it just because of the pagiging Pre-Islamic no island, or pati yung rituals mismo ay Pre-Islamic?
The ritual itself, actually there are 5 rituals that are Pre-Islamic. So there's Pagjamo Buhidia, Pagjamo Entosan Pampang, Pagjamo Entosan Laitan, Paibahao, Pagduwata. So those rituals are interconnected. Kailangan i-perform to make sure the general well-being of the people will be assured. And the Pagjamo Entosan Pampang is to cleanse the island. The Pagjamo Entosan in Laitan is to cleanse the surrounding sea from nature spirits, from malevolent spirits. And the Pagjamo Entosan, Pagjamo Buhidia to cleanse to purify the water, the source of water. And lahat ito ginagawa to appease the ancestors. Kasi yun nga, malaki yung nila. Parang they adhere to the sacred ancestral laws. Hindi nila binabaliwala kung ano yung ipinamana sa kanila ng mga ninuno nila.
Thank you po. Wala na pong magtatanong. Ayan. Si Miss Nanette Matilak raised her hand. Go
Yes. So, gusto ko lang tanungin, do I need to open my video?
Kayo po. Kahit hindi na.
Okay. Hindi good kasi baka sabihin robot. Anyway. Gusto ko lang tanungin if those rituals that they do, what is the impact on the protection of the people regarding sickness, for instance, COVID. Kasi napakahalaga ng mga ancient rituals ng Pilipinas na hindi natin sinasama dun sa mga mga pamamaraan para tayo ay mailigtas sa mga sakit kagaya ng COVID na galing din naman ito sa kalikasan o sa pag-abuso ng tao sa kalikasan.
Yes.
So meron ka bang insight mula dun sa nakuha mong nakuha mong pag-aaral?
In terms of doing the rituals to protect them from any misfortunes or from any illness, napansin ko, or parang nakita ko na throughout 2020, walang case ng COVID sa Tabawan. Hindi nagkaroon ng case ng COVID sa Tabawan Island. I think because they performed the Pagjamu Buhidia before the COVID happened. So February 2020, the Pagjamu Buhidia was observed, and I'm not sure if they have performed any ritual or any cleansing ritual no time of COVID, but supposedly meron last October 2020. That's why I went back to Tabawan. That's the Pagjamu and Rosan. Pero hindi siya natuloy because um, the community needs to observe health protocols. Kasi pag nagkaroon ng, yung Pagjamu kasi, it means celebration. So pag nagkaroon ng Pagjamu, maraming tao from the community yung pupunta doon sa site, and syempre to kumbaga, observe health protocols. Hindi muna siya natuloy and na-postpone siya. And nung time na nagpunta ako, yun yung time na na-document ko yung Paibahao and Pagduwata. So, swerte na rin, I guess, kasi it only happens once a year, the Pagjamu and the Paibahao and Pagduwata. So, magkasunod siya na ritual. Yeah.
So, ano talaga yun? Meant to be.
Question, Ms. Nanette. And thank you for attending this talk.
We have another question po from YouTube naman. The question is, ano po yung mga challenges na na-encounter nyo as photographer during your documentation sa Tawi-Tawi? From Mr. Paul Sugano.
Actually, this documentation encountered so many challenges. The first is COVID. Paano ko babiyahe from Tarlac to Tabawan Island? And then, kung titignan ko as a whole yung story, yung buong process of my documentation, 25% falls under photography, and then 25% falls under research and interviews, and then 50% writing. But since I have no background in writing or any cultural studies, that was the biggest challenge. But yun nga, kasi gusto ko talaga matutunan yung kultura nila. Gusto ko matutunan yung, kasi kumbaga, para ma-expand ko yung knowledge ko about Filipino Muslim. I read a lot of books connected to Islam and Filipino Muslims. And what else? Challenge, aside from the COVID and traveling to Tawi-Tawi, ano pa ba? May mga times na syempre nakaka-depress nung time of the pandemic if matutuloy pa ba tong kwento or matutuloy pa ba yung grant. Kasi I was looking forward to this project in 2020 before the start of COVID. So that was one of the biggest challenges. So pandemic, actually, biggest challenge was the depression. Nakaka-depress yung time of the pandemic. And I was able to overcome it by yung support ng friends, malaking bagay. And nakakausap about it.
May isa pa pong question sa Zoom naman from Mr. Roy Bautista. Just curious, were you able to capture quote-unquote curious or supernatural photos during your stay in Tawi-Tawi?
Wala naman akong na-capture na anything supernatural, but may mga naramdaman ako nung nandun ako. So, ayun. Pero hindi siya yung disturbance, kumbaga. And I also believe that the ancestral spirit, the powerful ancestral spirit, have guided me to finish the story. Kasi ang daming pwedeng maging hindrances or ang daming pwedeng maging parang challenges para hindi matuloy yung kwento or matuloy yung photo exhibit. But we were able to pull it off, the exhibition. So I guess yung mga ancestors are very glad that their stories were heard. Kasi yun nga, this are pre-Islamic stories of, of our Filipino Muslim brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Any more questions from our audience? Wala na po. Anything else you would like to add, Mr. Quiambao?
Thank you to the National Museum of the Philippines for here heading this lecture and for all the efforts and time that you've put into this exhibition to make it very, very successful. And thank you to our viewers, to the participants of this Zoom Photographers Talk for your time this afternoon. And I hope you can also visit Tawi-Tawi and other communities in the Philippines that their story needs to be told. Tuloy lang tayo magkwento.
Pwede pa po magpahabol ng isang question. Last. Singit lang natin. How many
Sure.
waligin or shaman po ang nag-perform? Iba-iba po ba per ritual?
Sorry. Ano yun?
How many waligin or shaman po ang nag-perform? Iba-iba po ba per ritual?
Yes. Iba-iba siya per ritual. The pagduwa it starts with 1 to 3 shamans. And then pag tumataas yung kumbaga yung nagkakaroon ng hype yung music, dumadami din yung mga sumasayaw. But
Hello? Sir Paul? I think we lost Sir Paul. Siguro yung internet connection. While waiting po, you may, I guess, ask more questions while we're waiting for him to come back. Hi, sir. You're back. Hello? Yan.
Sorry, I was
lang.
disconnected. Ayun.
Going back po to the...
Yes, going back to the question. What is it again?
Yung about po sa shaman spiritual.
Yeah, the shamans. Usually, in the Pagduwata, it starts with 1 to 3 shamans. And hanggang pag nagpo-progress yung tune or yung rhythm ng tagungguan, mas dumadami din yung sumasayaw. At maximum, siguro merong 10 shamans na sumasayaw for the Pagduwata. And then, kapag doon naman sa Pagjamu Buhidiya, there were siguro 20 to 25 shamans na sabay-sabay sumasayaw. Kasi malawak yung space nung ritual grounds dun sa Pagjamu Buhidiya. Ayun.
Thank you. For our viewers, if you don't have any more questions, let us now proceed to the awarding of the certificate. Let me read the certificate. Certificate of Appreciation is hereby awarded to Mr. Paul Allison R. Quiambao for his invaluable contribution as a resource person to the photographer's talk, a corollary activity to the Tabawan, the island of pre-Islamic rituals and traditional practices in Tawi-Tawi photo exhibition in celebration of the National Heritage Month, held on 18 May 2021. Given this 18th day of May 2021 at the National Museum of the Philippines, Manila, signed Director General Jeremy Barnes. Thank you, Mr. Quiambao, for your time.
Thank you so much, National Museum of the Philippines.
May we ask our viewers to please kindly fill out the evaluation form. Link will be posted in the chat box here in Zoom and in YouTube to receive an e-certificate. To formally close the event, please welcome Attorney Maria Rosen M. Flores Avila, the Deputy Director General for Administration of the National Museum of the Philippines.
And thank you for joining us in celebrating International Museum Day. I would like to congratulate Mr. Paul Quiambao for his photo exhibition, Tabawan, the Island of Pre-Islamic Rituals and Traditional Practices in Tawi-Tawi, at the National Museum of Anthropology. This was launched 3 days ago and will run until January 2 next year, and also for conducting this corollary talk. I believe that the participants and our viewers in the different social media platforms of the National Museum were inspired by the sharing of Mr. Quiambao. His talk is not merely on the technical aspects of documenting people, places, and events through the lens of a camera, but more so on how he captured the intangible part of the culture which became tangible in his photographs. His respect for the community, efforts in coordinating with different stakeholders in the conduct of his several visits to Tabawan, and in recording and giving a copy of the photographs to the Samatabawan are some of the important aspects of his documentation. May he serve as an example to young researchers, students, and cultural workers who wish to document the different groups in the country for the preservation and appreciation of our heritage. Again, thank you to all of you, and we hope to see you again in our next activities. While we are still closed, you may follow our social media platforms for our upcoming programs. Stay safe.
Thank you, Attorney Flores Avila. We really do hope that researchers or everyone who has seen or will see these stunning photographs will be inspired to document different groups and their practices with the intent of preserving both the tangible and intangible cultural heritage of our country. So again, on behalf of the National Museum of the Philippines, we would like to extend our gratitude to our partners, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the Bangsamoro Commission for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage, the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, the local government of South Ubian Municipality, and the Samatabawan community. And bago po tayo umalis, request ko lang po na mag-picture po muna tayo. Paki-on na lang po ang videos. Then, magbibilang na lang po. Yan. for documentation purposes. Thank you. Paki-on na lang po. Game. Smile po. 1, 2, 3. Smile lang po tayo. 3 pages po. Thank you. Okay na po. Thank you for joining us in this talk of Mr. Quiambao, and we hope that you will join us again in other programs prepared by the National Museum of the Philippines for Natural Heritage Month. And please visit the exhibition when the museum opens again to the public. The Tabawan, the island of pre-Islamic rituals and traditional practices in Tawi-Tawi, will run from May 16, 2021 until January 2, 2022 at the reception room of the National Museum of Anthropology. Again, kindly fill out the evaluation form. Link is posted here in the chat box to receive an e-certificate. Kindly like our social media pages so that you'll be updated with what's coming in our future programs. Again, thank you and keep safe.